Awesome. Well, we are going to get started. I'm sure more people are going to join. Excited to have this webinar today. We're going to be discussing, it's going to be the first part of a three-part series on how product managers can 10x their role with AI. And today, Kenny and I are going to be talking about the product manager bottleneck. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but we're going to talk a little bit about where product management is a bottleneck and how it shouldn't really be with AI. But welcome. And as I mentioned, as you guys, please, as you enter, just ping something in the chat. I want this webinar to really be about a conversation. And usually, if you say anything in chat at all, a hello, it'll be easier for you to also ask your questions. Let's kick it off, Kenny.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Rina.
All right, so myself, my name is Rina Alexin. I'm the CEO of Productside. I'm calling in now from Austin, Texas. So I saw someone else from Texas. I've been with the company now for just over 7 years, and I'm excited to be moderating today. But the star of the show really is Kenny. Kenny, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Rina. I am Kenny Kranseler, and I am dialing in today from Seattle, Washington. I've been at Productside for about 6 years now, or 6.5 almost, right? Or over 6.5. And but prior to that, was a product manager at lots of weird places like Kentucky Fried Chicken, Microsoft, and Amazon. So I've got lots of scars on my back from living it for a while.
Awesome. And so I'm going to kick it off first. But for those of you who are not familiar with us at Productside, we are an outcome-driven product partner. What that means is when we work with our clients and just about anybody who wants to partner with us, we do what we can to solve for that clients and person specific needs. That means we bring a complete solution for transformation. More than just training, we also do advisory and coaching, and we tailor all of our engagements to the context of our clients. Each one of our engagements is led by an invested expert like Kenny here, who really tries to embed into that team's culture, the entire organization's like gets to really, really understand the people, the processes, and the tools, and builds collaboratively a future state for product management. In this webinar, we really want to encourage you to ask questions. I mentioned that at the start. Write anything into the chat right now of hello, a title, where you're calling in from. This will really help us make this webinar tailored for you. And for right now, I'll answer the number one question we always get is, can I watch this later? And the answer is absolutely yes. All attendees will receive a link to the recording after the webcast is over, and it'll also be available on our website. For those of you who haven't yet, please also join our LinkedIn group. Can you go to the next question?
Yeah,
Yes.
got it.
Connect with us on LinkedIn. There's a link in the chat right now, and there's also a handy QR code. Our LinkedIn group has, I don't know, at this point, well over 60,000 professionals, and there are posts every day. It's a great place to share leadership best practices, connect with other people, and just in general, make sure that product management is not a lonely career for you. Network with your peers and share your challenges and your successes. Oh, and I did forget to mention, not only in the chat, there's also a QA button on the bottom. So if you want to ask a question anonymously, you're more than welcome to use the QA. And we're going to get to all of your questions. In fact, we love answering questions. There's going to be a QA at the end, Q&A at the end of the webcast, but we're going to bring in your questions when they're relevant as we kind of get on with the presentation.
So feel free to ask them as it strikes your fancy, and not wait till the end to ask the questions.
Yes, please do not wait.
Sure.
And there's no such thing as a dumb question.
Except the one you don't ask.
Yes, exactly. And I mentioned, so this is actually a webinar series. What we wanted to do at Productside is, there's just so much chatter around AI. How can you actually use AI well in your role? And we're going to be tackling it from three different perspectives. First, and that's today, we're going to be talking about using AI in discovery. The next session, I think is actually next week on the 13th, is going to be about building smarter with AI and using AI to help define solutions. And on November 20th, so all all November, you're going to get these three-part webinars, is about how do you use AI when you're doing a go-to-market. So fantastic set and excited to dive in today. Kenny, why don't you kick off with our agenda?
Perfect, thank you. So, for the first session, what I'll try to do is, you may have heard that there's a crisis going on in PM and product management. And product managers are now a bottleneck in the AI world, and that was actually first shared by Andrew Ng, I think it was a couple months ago. So I'll start sort of define that crisis. Let's sort of know what the perspective of Andrew was, what he got right, what he didn't get right, those kinds of things. Then I'll dive into a little bit how about really how, from a product management perspective, AI is enabling a new operating system for us. And I'll dig into a little bit on how that operating system can start to enhance and accelerate our discovery efforts. And then I'll wrap it all up, set you up for the discussion that we're having next week with Dean and on how to start to build smarter with AI. So we'll wrap it all up in a bow. Okay, so let's start with that crisis that in product management that Andrew Ng noted. And he stated that essentially engineers are 10 times faster. Product managers haven't sped up at the same rate. Now they're the bottleneck, right? So before I dive into what that means and how it goes there, before we dig into that statement, I want to start with a little poll about this topic, specifically about the engineering and or development and or creative teams that you have out there. And what I'm going to ask is, how much faster are you finding your engineer teams going with their AI tools? Would you say it's 5 to 10 times faster, 2 to 5 times faster, faster, but a little less than 2 times, or really not significantly faster? Or actually the AI is starting to slow them down?
I love the
All
last one because in some
right.
organizations, I can imagine it really is.
It can happen.
Yeah.
They're spending too much time talking to Claude and not getting their
Or
work done.
or doing the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, we'll talk
All
about
right, it looks like we're getting some responses in. It's actually kind of even. And
that. Yeah,
honestly, I'm a little bit surprised at
I
the
am
results.
surprised.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Shall we end this? I think we
Yeah,
got a lot of participants.
let's see. We'll give another 5 seconds just
All
for the last
right.
people who haven't been able to click a button yet. We'll give them a chance
Oh,
to click
finally we got one that says 5 to 10 times faster.
it. All
Okay,
right.
great.
All right. So let's share out the results with folks. So hey, interestingly, there's a spattering of people who are actually slowing them down, but a lot of them are saying it's not actually speeding them up, right? I'm seeing about a third of the folks that it's not really speeding them up. And for those that it is speeding them up, it's up to about 2 times faster. And I'm not seeing a lot of people accelerating hugely in the 2 to 5 to 10 times faster, as it turns out. So only less than a quarter of those folks sit in there, right?
Oh, yes.
Huh.
Yes. And I already see a comment. So, yes, please bring in those comments. Michael already made a good one. We're going to cover whether or not this is true.
Yeah, so we'll get there. All right. Well, thank you. It's good to know that. So, as I said, we will start this out with the statement that Andrew Ng made, right? And in many instances, the engineering teams are accelerating. And in a lot of companies, product management is operating with systems that were, in many instances, built for another era, right? And again, I'm not doing this as a product pitch. It's really what I'm doing it as a call to start to reconsider how you and your product teams operate within some of the more modern organizations, particularly those that are starting to adopt and leverage and be shaped by AI. So what did Andrew get right when if people haven't viewed it, you should go view his sort of 40-minute talk on what AI is doing in the engineering team, right? And in many instances, AI is starting to transform what engineering teams can deliver. There are a host of tools that development and engineering teams can use. A startup can go from idea to a working prototype in a matter of hours. A lot of teams, they're shipping code that once took quarters to do, and they're doing it in a span of a few days. What used to require heavy planning in order to get something done is being rebuilt weekly with minimum frictions, right? Again, if you think about it, though, the invention of modern writing instruments like the typewriter made writing easier. but they also led to the rise of writer's block, where deciding what to write became the bottleneck. Similarly, the invention of things like agentic coding assistants has led to sort of a new builder's block, where the holdup is now deciding what to build. That's what Andrew Ng is referring to when he calls when he talks about the product management bottleneck, right? And again, if we think about what we're doing as product managers, it's the art and the science of deciding what to build, right? And because things like agentic coding accelerates the writing of software to a given product specifications, deciding what to build can become the new bottleneck, especially in scenarios where we have early stage projects, right? And Andrew talks about the teams that he's working with. They're taking advantage of things like agentic coders. Um, he's saying that that he's valuing product managers who have really high user empathy and can make product decisions quickly, so that the speed of product decision making matches the increased speed that we're starting to see with some coding projects happening.
Yeah. So, Kenny, I see a lot of comments here about the accuracy of, and maybe this is why we saw from the survey, quite a number of people said, AI is slowing people down.
Yeah,
So, I think the message, though, is that over time, as AI does get better, its use case in coding is well understood and is being practiced even today by many organizations. So, those organizations, and I think Tyler commented, it's in the learning phase of AI. Those
yeah,
organizations who are, uh, using AI in coding are going to get better. So over time, even this is not today. We can imagine, forecasting out a few years, this may still happen, and the implications on product remain the ones that we're going to be talking about today.
correct. Right. Yeah. So what you may find is that the maturation of AI from a product management or a product perspective is slower than it is from a development perspective,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's really what Andrew's pointing to, right? That's what he's pointing to, say we're now the bottleneck because the place where it's most developed is happening faster. And what what can we start to do to catch up, right? And if we look at it, some of our engineering teams have upgraded, and so as a result, in many organizations, product workflows are lagging a little bit. And there's a couple of reasons for that, right? Things like discovery are still kind of manual, right? Um, the feedback we get is still scattered across tools and across teams, right? If we want to prove out what the impact is from a revenue and outcome standpoint, it's hard to quantify that, right? And we're still prioritizing sometimes with reactive and intuition-driven tools, right? And so what Andrew Ng is pointing to is that there's some sort of a systematic imbalance that's hard to ignore, right? But at some level, the landscape's starting to change, right? If I quote Andrew Ng, yesterday a team proposed a ratio of one product manager to zero point 0.5 engineers. That would have sounded absurd year ago, right? And he hasn't seen product management work becoming faster at the same speed that he's seen some of the engineering work happening. So that's led to some of the ratio shift, right? When he heard someone say, "I need one product manager for every half an engineer versus for four engineers prior," right? I'm not sure it was a good idea, but it's the first time he started to hear it, right? So we need to think about what that means, but we can't forget our job, right? I see the comments you're making are right, right? With a hugely faster development cycle, right? It might seem really useful to start to open the spigot on our backlog, right? Finally give all the people everything they want. Start at the top, turn every ticket into code, right? Um, but an honest look at our actual backlog probably suggests that most of it lacks context, is incomplete, proposes solutions rather than understanding problems, and often wrong ones. Um, it's generic, things like make it more user friendly or go faster, right? It doesn't really understand how our product works, or it might be based on a single customer's request for some way out obscure feature that doesn't have any value over most of the installed base. Think of it mostly junk, right? Sometimes if we just did everything in our backlogs, they aren't necessarily thoughtful requirements that can be taken literally, right? And if we did all of that, it would lead to crappy, confusing, unfocused bloatware, right? And, as a product design engineering team, we need to have, make sure we have a primary audience and a major use case in mind, right? Then we can thoughtfully curate our products to deliver real value for our core audience and not just chase every sort of shiny object that might be out there, right? Just because we can move faster doesn't mean we should move faster, or we create sort of this featureitis curve that's out here and we start to do things that don't add value anymore. And we start to, we have to, in many instances, we need to understand what our core users need rather than what they ask for and fit that into some sort of a viable business model. We have to pan for gold in tons of mud. We have to win and retain customers by, in many instances, thinking ahead of them, right? Manage our products and our customers, not have them manage us.
So, Kenny, when I first heard Andrew's talk, my instant reaction was similar to how when we look at organizations which have, let's say, 100 engineers and 5 or 10 product managers, they're always trying to feed the machine. They're
Yeah,
always in that. And then leadership, looking at the resources that they have, are always challenging the product team. Well, why aren't you moving faster? Why are, and that's kind of what we're talking about here
yeah,
around there will be also potentially pressure from leadership.
get
Uh,
it done. You can get
yeah,
more done
thank
faster, so just do it all, right?
exactly. And
Right?
that's not the right decision.
That you got it. So, part of what we have to think of is that there's opportunities for AI in our role too, right? If we look into it deeply, AI is not replacing product managers. It's upgrading them, right? And the best product managers of the future won't be defined by how much they can manage, but how clearly they can decide, how quickly they can learn, and start to drive the outcomes and understand from among those wonderful things we could do. Let's just, if we can do a lot more, it doesn't mean we should do more. It means we should do what's required faster to get it out there more quickly and have that system move faster than ever, right? And essentially, what it's doing is reframing the role of product management, right? The idea that product managers are bottleneck only holds if they're expected to work in isolation or rely entirely on some of the outdated input models that we've created, right? Instead, I think there's a real growing opportunity for product managers and product teams to lead, start to reframe their work around outcomes, leverage AI to help them get there, figure out what are the right outcomes, right? And what I find is that, the leading product managers, they're adapting. They're not waiting for permission to catch up. They're really starting to redesign their workflows using AI not so much to automate judgment, but to create the conditions for faster decisions, right? What we're seeing is that PMs are now reducing validation cycles from weeks to hours by using AI to synthesize customer conversations, right? Start to identify repeating themes and simulate early user reactions. A lot of them are starting to sketch out prototypes and basic interactions with no code builders or LLM-based tools. Start to close the gap between idea and feedback. And some are starting to feed raw data sets into the AI tools they have to surface insights, generate recommendations at a very early stage, in many instances without needing the help from the data team. And some are out there on the bleeding edge, building their own agents with small sort of context-aware tools that monitor customer forums or aggregate feedback or highlight competitive gaps, right? So lots of opportunities there, right? And I think, even before generative AI became commonplace in business, product discovery was starting to evolve, right? Product teams I don't view this as a revolution, more of an evolution, right? And product teams are continuing to move away from running multiple lengthy research projects and tests and starting to shift to continuous motion, right? Um, product discovery is now more accelerated, has more inputs, and it's always on. And I think the opportunity here with AI is for product teams to optimize this discovery process even further and make it even faster, right? Imagine, sifting through thousands of customer reviews and feedback within minutes to pinpoint exactly why customers are dissatisfied. It's not really futuristic. Some of it's happening right now, right? Um, Companies that are using AI for product development are significantly more likely to lead to markets. Salesforce, some of their AI technology has started to boost customer retention. Adobe has used their AI-driven Sensei to notably enhance user engagement, right? It is transforming product management, starting to enable us to have deeper insights into customer needs, staying ahead of trends, making really data-driven market decisions, right? Help us to be more competitive in today's market, right? And I think we can start to think about the kind of tools we could use, and that bottleneck can start to be reversed, right? We can start to leverage our own velocity potentially through AI. Our role isn't diminishing, it's really being upgraded, enabling us to orchestrate and start to learn at sort of machine speed in some instances. All right, so what does that look like? Essentially, it's what I'm going to call this a new product management operating system that we can start to engage in and doesn't pull us out, right? We still need the guide rails there, but there's an opportunity to do that. All right, so I want to do one more poll before I dive into that operating system. So how often are you using AI to enhance and accelerate some of your product management work? Would you say more than daily, weekly, monthly, or really haven't started using AI to enhance your product management because you're unfamiliar or your company doesn't allow it?
I'm less surprised about the answers coming in. While this poll is up, why don't you also share in the chat what ways you have found AI to be extremely useful for you? Sounds like most of you do use it quite a bit.
That is good. Okay, so we're getting great participation in this poll. I love that.
Jira tickets. The good, that's a very good use case. Slug is again, I saw someone else write it. Engineering needs to then go and edit it. Always edit your work. Always edit your work, even if you use AI. All
All right,
right.
so hopefully we'll help you with discovery here to enable you to use AI and still have guidelines. So yeah, the good news is that three-quarters of you using it daily or more than daily. The rest of you using it weekly, and not too many of you are admitting to not using it at all in your PM activity. So it's a reality of life, and I think if I go back to what I was saying before, AI is not going to take your job, right? PMs that are powered by AI will take your job, right? And it looks like this group is at least starting to think that way, so that's good. So let's move onward and upward and figure out what that new operating system starts to look like, right? So before we dig into using AI to drive our development efforts, we need to get to the core of the initiative, right? The core problem is that we need to not just move faster, but also understand what impact we can have by moving faster. That is, velocity must be measured in impact, not feature count, right? There was a chief product officer summit in San Francisco, and this past summer, where product leaders leading into a question that I think feels more urgent today than ever. What does velocity actually mean? And there was a fireside chat with Oded Gal, who's the chief product officer at Zoom. And he had some stories from Zoom's hypergrowth years and revealed what velocity really meant when the stakes are high, and why product leaders today start to need a new definition, right? He really unpacked how velocity is defined, how it's measured, and how AI is reshaping the pace and in many instances the quality of product decisions, right? He moved beyond the cliche of just shipping faster and focused on the way we need to think of velocity, right? Decisions and features that matter to customers and to businesses that serve those customers, right? That new PM operating system, even if it's powered by AI, it still starts with outcomes, right? AI can handle output automation, but product managers need to connect work to measurable outcomes. And so as we think about discovery and what it does for what AI can help us do around that, discovery becomes a continuous experiment loop, not just a one-time phase that we go through. I think that's the big opportunity here is we're continuing to discover, keeping those outcomes in mind, right? Keeping those, what we want to do, what are the impacts, what are the benefits we're driving toward in that environment, right? And in that role, one of AI's biggest gift in discovery is really around synthesis, right? You can now upload thousands of feedback points and get distilled weighted patterns almost instantly, right? You know, it becomes sort of empathy at machine scale. It keeps us as product managers connected to why users behave as they do, right? And there's literally hundreds of AI tools out there that you can feed with what is already on your corporate internet. What's in your email inbox, what's in your CRM, what's all around your SharePoint, and enable you to start to corral the quantity of data that's in many instances highly unstructured and drive to insights about what the key outcomes your customers need, what your customers want, and what they might demand from your product. Right. So lots of opportunities there on that for you to go forward. And as we get later on, I'll share a whole bunch of tools for how to do that. Um, but it still doesn't mean that you become an automaton and just push paper and documents back and forth to your AI agent of choice, right? Um, your gut doesn't disappear, right? It just gets calibrated. It gets sped up, right? The AI augments your instincts with things like rapid pattern recognition across text, across sentiment, across voice of customer data. And that data is not replacing your intuition. It's really refining your intuition, allows you and tells you where to go, right? So still trust your instincts, right? Trust your mental models and don't just take the input that you're getting AI as gospel, but as a place to look for even further patterns to go to work with.
So Kenny, I have a question here for you,
Yeah.
it's actually for me. Um, but so I see AI use cases. I love that the group here, great engagement and helped us understand like how you're using it today. I've seen a lot. You mentioned just now about AI's use case around lots of different inputs, synthesizing data. Um, what do you say when people want to build agents to do the user interviews, like have like now 100 different user interviews through some agent, and then have the AI just synthesize back to you the insights from those quote unquote user interviews? What do you say to that practice?
Yeah, so there's sort of the synthetic user scenario that you
Hmm.
have out there, right? And so I've got two sides of that. One is be skeptical around some of those, but don't be afraid to start to experiment with them. Because I've seen some data that says like if you if you can set up the synthetic users right, they're like 85 to 90% compliant with what an actual user might be out there. So what it can allow you to do, right, is a couple of things, right? One is be able to reach those users faster and a lot easier than you could have otherwise, right? But then it becomes incumbent on you to make sure you define those users correctly, right? Because it can go wildly wrong if you're trying to create synthetic users that don't actually match your individual users. So one, make sure you clearly and definitively understand who your users are. And then when you get that feedback back, make sure you actually go check that with real users as well. So um, be skeptical, experiment with it, see if it works for you, but make sure it doesn't take you away from really understanding who your users are to get there.
Yeah, Kenny, I would agree with you. I still think that there is a lot of loss. I always like to think like don't delegate your competitive advantage. And your competitive
Yeah.
advantage is really understanding your market and users. And you get that from actually talking to your user base. So I worry if I hear product managers now, they're going to just have an AI agent doing some of the work. Now you could marry that with, hey, there are some insights uncovered that then I go validate, but gathering the context, I feel like that, you know, that's just delegating
Yeah.
a
So
huge
I
part.
think what you're saying is don't have it replace your reaching out to users, but have it augmented if you
No,
can.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So a couple things. So let's dive into a little deeper in what AI can mean for discovery to be reinvented. Right. So let's talk a little bit about where it can add value for us. Right. And so a couple of things. One is discovery that once took weeks to get done. How many interviews do you leverage them to do there? Again, you can augment those, but clearly it does a lot of work for you in terms of sorting and tagging. And those things, rather than taking weeks, can start to happen in hours. And the goal here isn't skipping rigor, it's skipping latency, right? So a couple of examples. Company did using AI for feedback clustering, a company called Dovetail. What they did it for is they were doing manually tagging some of the feedback they were getting from customers, and that was taking days and days. They took was taking 10 days into 3 hours just by getting the patterns, recognizing those patterns, and tagging those patterns. So huge opportunity for that. A company called Maze was doing a rapid prototype test, right? And instead of having to schedule usability sessions, they could run it live in the in-app tests within hours to make that happen. And the other thing is you can use things like ChatGPT to do things like instant summarization. A company called WellSmart that does financial tools. They uploaded 500 interview transcripts, and they got themes back in less than an hour, which used to take them over a week to do full time manually to make that happen. So suddenly, a lot of the tagging, the sorting, the identifying of those identification of trends, rather than spending weeks or months doing it, you can now do it in hours, right? With help from your AI assistant, right? According to a recent McKinsey global survey, um, generative AI has supposedly ramped up product management productivity by 40%. Doing things like slashing the time they spend on documentation and coding so you can start to focus on some of the big picture strategy, right? And what AI does for you is transform discovery into this continuous learning loop. Now you can keep doing it. You don't have to schedule it out in advance and say, this is our time to do discovery. You're always doing discovery, right? And your job is to make sure that that loop runs clean, right? So you're monitoring as it goes along, asking the right questions, interpreting the right set of outputs, right? It isn't a matter of set it and forget it, right? You should view AI as your partner in the discovery loop. I oftentimes think of it kind of like an employee that's working for you that's really, really good at processing data, both structured and unstructured, right? And if you had such an employee working for you, you wouldn't just trust what the employee provided to you all the time. You'd challenge assumptions. You'd ask for rework where needed. You'd start to enable that to start to create that better version of truth, right? So your your job is still to start to work with that AI and manage it, enhance it, give it the right context, provide insights based on what it's telling you to do its job better, right? A company, one of Switzerland's oldest private insurance company, La Mobilière, they had a discovery challenge that's probably familiar to a lot of the folks out there. They had to coordinate complex product development across 1,500 distributed specialists who are all working on their digital insurance solutions. Um, their product discovery process, it oftentimes involved lots of different departments, sales, accounting, legal, contract management. And they were all working to create online versions of insurance contract management processes. What happens that their traditional process was starting to break down. Preparing physical planning sessions took days, involved countless printouts that were oftentimes discarded afterwards. And a lot of times it was virtually impossible to maintain alignment across all those teams, right? So they started to AI power their discovery, right? They implemented an AI-driven product discovery framework. using a variety of platforms, and they really focused on sort of three key areas. One was intelligent planning and synthesis. So instead of using manual preparation that took days, they had AI-powered templates. Did things like automatic Jira, integrated, some of their Jira tickets automatically. They reduced the setup time to 20 minutes for each planning session. The system automatically populated the program boards with project data, eliminated a lot of the manual errors and outdated information. They did some dependency mapping, and they were able to do that dynamically by having the AI-powered dependency visualization work. Teams could instantly see how changes in one area could impact other departments. They got proactive collaboration to reduce some of the risk in terms of what they were doing out there. They did things like collaborative intelligence, had some of the real-time collaboration features with their AI-powered insights to enable, both remote as well as hybrid remote and in-person discovery sessions to happen. They had automated voting, got rid of some group bias. And as a result, they got measurable results, not in months, but in weeks, right? They found that they got a 50% increase in meeting efficiency. They saved more than 3 days in the prep time for each of their planning sessions. Lots of manual work was eliminated. They didn't have a lot of information loss through uh, problems with synchronization or documentation or that kind of stuff. So, and more importantly than just the speed was the quality of the process. The discovery improved dramatically. Um, the teams could see a full overview of the dependencies, the features, the product status throughout the whole process. So as a result, some of their go live dates were more attainable, and the customers were a lot happier with what they see came out a lot quicker. Now, most of you may have heard of or seen or experienced vibe coding, and we'll go into more vibe coding next week with Dean. But in many instances, you can use it to rapidly build and prototype software by describing some of your ideas in natural language. And a lot of it is around enabling us to show instead of tell, and getting to rapid prototypes of solutions as we ideate and test them. But it's also of use during discovery phase, right? It can act as that bridge between our strategic thinking and tactical execution, allowing teams to start to generate interactive mock-ups that test some of the key assumptions we have with users in days rather than weeks, right?
So Kenny, on this, this
Yeah.
one makes me the most nervous, and I know we were going to present to it today because we're seeing, I think across LinkedIn, across the internet, certainly people talking about how now the product development cycle is going to be the idea in the morning, fully built solution by evening in front of customers. Now there's a real, like, we're talking this is something, and it's also now being certain for product managers in the hiring process. Like, there are certain companies that think this is really the future. Now, I think what we want to make sure and say, is there room for vibe coding and discovery? Somewhat. Yes,
Mhm.
like we cannot
Yeah.
ignore that.
Yeah.
But we don't want product managers to think this is the only way to do discovery or to even do mock-ups. In most cases, this is way further down when you already have, this is more towards the solutioning side
Yeah.
because you're having people respond to something that looks a lot more fully baked. You're actually going to miss some of the rich insights you might uncover from something that is you know, drawn on an, drawn on a napkin. So I want to be careful here in terms of how we're talking about vibe coding and discovery.
Yeah, you can be careful here, right? If it's not a fully baked solution, don't make it look like one, right? Is probably a good hint to take here. But I mean, there's pluses and minuses here. And Rina, you clearly point out some of the challenges of getting there. There are some pluses in that you can start to put some of your assumptions down more quickly to get people to understand those assumptions and react to those assumptions in ways that they couldn't before, right? But two things. One, it's not fully baked out code, so don't say, "Hey, we've got it now, let's ship it," right? Um, and um, and you can test some of those assumptions without having to take weeks to get there, right? you can determine some of that viability early on. You can engage stakeholders now with something a little more tangible, right? So you can actually show them in the process of doing that and get
Yeah.
them to think about new paths
So,
along the way.
so Kenny, we have a question here from Derek that I think
Yeah.
kind of is a good time to take here. And it's, have you seen AI influence the prototyping of hardware products? There's a question here specifically about tools, which I don't know if we want to go into, but have you noticed that? And I have an example on this one as well.
Go ahead, Rina. I'll let you take
Oh,
it then.
okay. I'll take. Well, this is just something that I heard recently, and that
Yeah.
it can influence the prototyping of something. I'm thinking less hardware, more like physical space, and that has to do with Formula One.
Ah,
Formula
okay.
One racing has a lot of. I mean, they use a lot of simulations to understand like how the car is going to move depending on the weather and curvature. I don't know. It's quite a complex engineering challenge. And I do think that they use AI in simulations quite a lot before they actually build something. And I think that's probably the use case here
Yeah.
about you can create a virtual lookalike. I saw it also with a company, BP
Mhm.
Oil,
Yeah.
doing simulations before they actually go and build some of their oil rigs. So I think that, I see more of that. Less, I guess it is related to prototyping, but it's more about how you build early and make some estimations with simulation.
I do think that's a big use case in hardware is the ability to do simulations, right? And now you can start to incorporate a lot of those external factors and actually run it at scale, right?
Hmm.
Right. So rather than having to create those environments and wait for that environment to happen, you can actually simulate it on live, right? So
Yeah.
I think it helps with some of those things is that you can actually have even hard. It may not be AI driven hardware, but you can have the hardware you have create simulations that work in a variety of scenarios.
Right. And I think that's not necessarily new, like digital twins, that concept. I think it's probably more now with generative AI, more
Yeah.
accessible. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. As I said, it's not a revolution, it's an evolution, right? It
Hmm.
it just makes some of those digital twin simulations work more quickly and with more variables baked in than we could, 5 or 10 years ago, right? You can also test some of your hypotheses in real time, right? Instead of having to wait for survey results, this is you can test hypotheses instantly with some of the AI user simulations, right? And this is, sometimes AI tools can generate feedback. But they can help us critique assumptions. They can help us iterate even before we do human testing, right? Real world example, Sarah, who's what was a product manager at a fintech startup. She used AI to analyze 10,000 different customer support tickets, and it took her hours, not weeks, right? And she could reduce churn. She used it to get there. And what's real interesting is she didn't just find the top complaints. Um, the AI was actually able to uncover some subtle connection between users who mentioned a specific pain point and those who are most likely to churn. So she was able to get some correlations built in here. Um, and it led her to find an insight that may have been buried in the data for months. As a result, they created a targeted retention campaign for those users. Wound up the company saved millions as a result of folks doing that.
So,
Right.
so Kenny, we have another question here, and I think it's
Yeah.
a kind of yeah. So, and I apologize if I say your name wrong, but Najabat has a question here about agreeing that AI can analyze what users do,
Mhm.
but how do we capture the human frustrations and emotional cues that surface through ethnographic observations, like actually watching users in the real environment and seeing how they wrestle with problems?
Yeah, and I think it becomes two sides of this thing, right? Is that there are times you can use AI, and there are times you actually want to go out and touch and feel users. It doesn't replace it; it augments it.
Can I poke
Yeah,
on
go
that
ahead.
one a little bit? Because
Yeah,
this is why I love having this discussion. There's always two sides, and I also saw, and I kind of wrote into Michael as someone who joined us at the beginning and maybe
yeah,
misunderstood our goal here. But AI, like open, I would really want us to genuinely open our minds to what is what is at our fingertips? What are new capabilities that are afforded to us by AI? There's actually a company, and I think I did a recording on our podcast with someone from Realize, where AI can actually, you can, if you can have a video of the conversation or like see how the person is actually using the product, and maybe there's some frustrations, they actually know based on the facial expressions. So like they've decoded the facial expressions to really understand the frustration. So you might actually be able to get more information about different cues that an AI can pick up where a person may not. Now, I agree with Kenny. Like in general, I tend to think it's a signal. You got to go chase that signal and validate it
Right.
yourself so that you get that rich context that helps you make better decisions faster. Because the speed at which your decision making is really the speed at which you're able to understand your context. That's that's what actually helps you with going faster. So yes, AI can still help you even with things like that you would think are genuinely human, but you should get validation and actually go out and interact with your
Yeah.
users as well.
But I like that point is that there are cues that AI can pick up on that we might miss,
Hmm.
right? And so, if there's, love your example, if there's a video of someone interacting with our product, it's going to say, "Oh, look here, the person's frustrated," right? And you should really figure out what's going on there. So there are
Yeah.
opportunities to even make that happen within the AI environment and allow us to do things better and quicker and faster and all that kind of stuff. And that leads to my next point, which is
Exactly
right.
that.
It's not just about gathering more data or that data faster, but getting better signals, right? It can do things like weighting the feedback by customer value or behavior or churn risk, right? Um, and so it can help us understand which signals matter, right? Um, Nike, their product team was using AI-driven natural language processing to move thousands of raw transcripts and reviews into a live dashboard with actionable insights, right? And again, it allowed them to turn their feedback noise into strategic signals in hours instead of weeks, right? They partnered with Onboard and they took some of the raw feedback data, the chat transcripts, the open text support logs, the survey responses, the store and online reviews, and they did natural language processing and sentiment analysis to build sort of real-time dashboards that illustrated the customer voice and the friction point, right? And what happened was that the feedback surfaced as sort of predictive insights rather than just historical reports. The product teams could and support teams could then act faster, right? It wasn't just using dashboards. They used AI to filter out some of the noise, right? The generic, the product's okay feedback, right? And highlight the signals, right? The recurring pain points, the feature gaps, the sentiment shifts, right? So instead of looking at, thousands of comments manually that took weeks, the teams could use some of these systems to figure out and focus on the meaningful issues quickly, right? Enable AI to amplify the signals in your product discovery rather than just layering on sort of more analytics as we go through it. And again, the goal here is not massive discovery projects, right? Use AI to run dozens of micro validations, right? You can do more quickly, cheap, quick, directional, right? And each one of them can start to compound your confidence in the product direction, right? There was a small London-based tech company that was serving nonprofits, and they were building a feature that used GPT-4 to improve things like social media post, right? Um, and test and refine some of the prompts they put in because the outputs that this tool was creating could be unpredictable. Um, it enabled them to conduct lots of um, extensive experiments and start to build a shared mental model of how the AI responded to various inputs, right? And within 10 weeks, the company's AI squad. They prototype and launch multiple new features, right? They use one what's called an AI feedback tool on their platform to help some of their nonprofit users improve even how they drafted their media post, right? Um, they felt more confident in their messaging, and saw lots of uptake, and suddenly this feature that they couldn't have done if they hadn't done some of this rapid and iterative testing along the way. All right, so now we get to that point where I'm going to recommend some tools that you can use to have AI sort of force multiply some of your discovery processes. But before I show these to you, I have to preface it. The fact these tools are set at a point in time, November 4th, 2025. Some may be obsolete or replaced with something better next year, next month, next week, maybe even tomorrow, right? And again, treat these tools, and we'll share this slide out with folks. I'm not going to go through each level of detail, but they're categorized by different types of discovery you can do about, analyzing vast amounts of customer data, or using vibe coding, or doing hypothesis testing in real time, or being able to discern this signal from noise, or even doing tiny acts of discovery that I mentioned in the last slide, right? Again, these are discovery accelerators. They're not decision makers, right? Your job is still to frame the right questions. The AI's job is to shorten the distance between question and insight, right? And think of it that way, right? So let's summarize what we picked up in this session, right? Uh, right. Start with the first big leap, outcomes over outputs, right? For years, product teams have measured success by what they shipped, features, releases, deliverables. But now you can start to help you flip that equation. When engineers can generate prototypes or code 10 times faster, the question isn't, can we build it anymore? It's should we? Anchor yourself on outcomes, right? So instead of racing to build faster, our new job is to decide smarter, and that begins with the outcomes, right? The second leap is what I'll call synthesized empathy, right? Empathy's always been our superpower as product managers, but in some instances, empathy doesn't always scale, right? You can only talk to so many users. AI helps you change that by turning some of your mountains of raw feedback tickets and transcripts and reviews into some living insight, right? Imagine uploading 10,000 support chats and instantly seeing patterns of pain, motivation, emotions start to emerge. That's what you can do, right? It's empathy, but amplified, not one-on-one interviews, but continuous learning powered by synthesis, right? And when you combine that empathy with data, you get to our next sort of big leap, which is data-informed instincts. You've probably heard the saying, trust your gut. In today's world, the gut alone isn't enough. The data alone isn't either, right? The magic happens when the intuition and the information start to meet, right? AI helps us calibrate some of our basic instincts by constantly feeding back patterns, contradictions, evidence, right? Over time, it starts to sharpen our judgment, not replace it. Again, AI is your co-pilot for decision making, right? Now your instinct isn't random, it's trained on evidence. And as those instincts evolve, they feed a much faster rhythm of learning, right? Continuous learning loop. Again, if we go back to the old world, discovery was a phase. You did research, analyzed, then you moved on to delivery. But in sort of the AI-driven world, the learning never stops, right? It lets us sort of automate that loop, collect data, cluster insights, generate hypotheses, right? Test them, refine them, lather, rinse, repeat, right? And again, the result is your discovery stops being a project and becomes a habit, right? A constant rhythm of how you build, how you learn. And that rhythm depends on one final skill, knowing what to pay attention to, right? This is signal focus. With all this new data, all the dashboards, all the feedback streams, the real challenge isn't access, it's attention, right? And again, AI is going to help us separate the signal from the noise, filter the chaos, start to understand clusters and patterns, highlight anomalies, right? Point us toward those things that really matter, right?
Yeah.
It's not
So
about just,
Kenny,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're spot on here, especially with the signal focus. I just want to time check and make sure
Oh
we leave
yeah.
time for questions.
Sorry.
Um, so, uh, so, and the first one is, so there, we've now talked, a lot, about how AI can really speed up discovery. It can also help you sharpen your insights, know where to focus. If you were starting today, where would you start?
It, the early start, take a lot of the data you have sitting around and throw it at your AI tools to help you summarize it and gain insight from it. Right? You've got customer support logs, you've got support tickets, you've got CRM, you've got all those things, right? Use it at the base level to help you synthesize that massive data that you have to manually work through today. So that's sort of that first step, that first sort of key initiative that you can work with.
Yeah, I really like that. I also think that the wrong answer would have been start vibe coding
No,
your
no, not
discovery.
there.
That's probably the last one. Yeah, but I say that specifically because I feel like there's just so much attention right now on it, but that's kind of a really fast road to getting to the wrong solutions, in my opinion. All right. So just to wrap things up, today we talked about how you can master discovery. Kenny brought forth a lot of different examples from various companies, whether it was complex, trying to manage all, hundreds of people to collaborate, all the way down to finding new insights from customer support tickets. There's a lot of ways in which AI can really speed up your understanding of your context, which will then speed up your decision making. Next up, we will have defining solutions. We're going to actually go in, I think we're going to go live vibe code something and do it appropriately in the solutioning part of product management.
Yeah.
And finally, we're going to go and talk about how you can use AI in your go-to-market strategy as well. So can we just
Can we do
go
this
forward
poll?
because we have
Yeah.
um,
Oh, yes.
yeah, let's go into. So, for those of you who joined us today, thank you so much. We actually have a free AI problem starter pack. It's a free AI cheat sheet. There are 3 prompts already built for you that will help you clarify the ask of your stakeholders, prioritize what matters, and build a story to then go back and talk to your stakeholders about what you're building. This is a free download. Please feel free to grab it. There's a link also in the chat. And as well, for those of you who are interested, we have an AI class running, I guess, next month, where you can learn both how to use AI in product and then how do I use AI within my product? How do I make that strategic decision about where AI might add value to my business and my customers? Next one is happening December 15th to the 19th,
Yep.
right before the holidays. So it's like a gift to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and and I mentioned here's the 2 upcoming webinars. Part 2 is building smarter with AI, and then go to market at AI speed. Part 2 and part 3, they're all happening in November over the next two weeks. So before, I mean, we only have a few
Before
real
Thanksgiving.
productive weeks left in this year. So get register. You'll get a recording of the webinar if you cannot attend. But this is a great way to set yourself up for success in 2026. All right, and then here are some of the upcoming courses. We're just so good with QR codes here at this company. Here's another QR code for you. If you're
Keep taking
interested,
pictures.
Kenny's actually running an optimal product management course. I think registration is closing this week. So if you're
Hurry up.
interested in learning fundamentals of product management with, there's some AI in there as well, because AI is going to be just part of our regular job. And it's running in November, in December, and then of course I already mentioned the AI class in December. Uh, we're also, for those of you who are local, I only saw somebody in Houston, but for anybody local in Texas or willing to travel, Austin is wonderful this time of year. We have an Austin class running December 2nd to 4th. Um, Wonderful. There's a lot of links. Please stay connected. And I know we took a lot of your questions. If you have more questions, please feel free to reach out to Kenny or myself on LinkedIn, or email us. Our emails are probably pretty well known out there.
Very easy to find. We're hanging
Yeah.
on LinkedIn too, so you can probably find us
Yes,
there.
at Productside. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thank you, folks.